Hello, guys and gals, and welcome. So, season three has a mechanic, and that mechanic is, well, he's sitting right here, or it is sitting right here. It's a spider, but it's not a spider, and he's got like 6 legs instead of 8, and a weird-looking phallic tail. And the spider is an interesting little pet. He's, well, he's very powerful actually, and I'm kind of surprised that people don't realize just how powerful he really is. So let's go over together the Seneschal. We're going to talk about the spider pets, what I think about the spider pets, and we'll go over some more stuff. So first off, the spider pet, you have to get him by doing the seasonal content. You can actually get him really quickly by doing the seasonal content. All seasonal content is marked with these little leaves, by the way. Anything you see has a little leaf on it that indicates it's seasonal content. And even seasonal quests are denoted by the leaf, just so that you're aware. The Seneschal's construct can be found right here, this little clicky doojack right here. And when you go to the Seneschal construct, you've got two main things. You've got the governing stones and you've got the tuning stones. For lack of a better term, because it is a little confusing, let's call the governing stones your actual skills. Okay, these are the actual skills that the character is capable of. What can you do? Like if you're playing Diablo 2 and you had like Zeal on left click and Holy Shield on right click. That's basically kind of what's going on here, right? So this represents your left click, and this represents your right click. The tuning stones represent ways to modify your left and right click in interesting and useful ways. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can set up this guy, and I've actually been very impressed with his capability so far. First off, the melee abilities are very simple. There's basically Gyrate, which is a whirlwind ability. There's Pummel, which is a direct frontal attack. There's also Bushwhack, which seems to be really effective in hitting targets multiple times. And then there's Impale, which is a fairly powerful straight line attack, which hits all enemies in a straight line from that point. There's also the ranged effects. So there's Focus Fire, which is basically Inferno from the Sorceress. It's a nice beam attack. There's also Lightning Bolt, which is literally just one lightning bolt that comes out straight. Firefly is a very interesting one that does a bunch of like little exploding bomb creatures, which is kind of cool. And then Tempest is lightning that kind of like strikes everything nearby. It's rather interesting. Then utility-wise, we've got Protect, which gives you a pretty huge barrier. We have Reconstruct, which is a very nice heal. It's 30% of your maximum life over 3 seconds, and he pretty much just spams it constantly. I mean, all the time. I've been using Reconstruct pretty much since the beginning. Flash of Adrenaline, which is a very nice one to increase your damage, your multiplier damage. It gives you a 14% multiplier. And finally, Auto Defense, which shoots down projectiles. Now, how do you rank these up? Well, you have to find additional ones. So for when you first find one, it's just going to take its place in the tree. If you don't have it, it looks like this. It's grayed out, so that means you don't have it. And once you find one, it goes to rank 1. For every additional one that you find, it ranks them up by 10 points. And as you can see here, I currently have this one at rank 6, which does require 40 more points. So it would require me to find at the current time 3 additional pummel stones to rank this up to rank 7. Ranking up the stones seems to have various effects like increasing damage, or for instance with the utility stones, increasing the heal, increasing the barrier, like giving more damage output, and increasing the number of projectiles that can potentially be shot down. Tuning stones are exactly the same. They can be leveled up in the same method. And the tuning stones do have restrictions on what they can be put on. Like, for instance, you see how this Swift support doesn't allow me to put it on Flash of Adrenaline and a Reconstruct because it doesn't work with those. However, if you hover over one that does work with it, you'll notice that it's green. So it's got a nice little check mark to let you know that it does actually work with that. Now, you can modify these in like a ton of different ways. And to go over some of these, let's talk about all of them. So Swift support is going to increase the attack speed bonus of the ability, which is going to make it a hit faster. Slowing support is going to add an additional slow to whatever effect that you want. So if you're a character that wants crowd control, maybe you just want to slow down monsters so you can kite better, that's an addition that you could make. Efficiency support is going to make it so that it has more critical strike chance versus the same target. Frigid support is very powerful. It does converts basically 50% of the of the attack to cold damage, and then on top of that also applies a chilling effect, which can be very useful if you are a character that needs monsters chilled, and also if you're scaling cold damage, so like a blizzard sorceress or something along those lines. Bleeding supports, similarly, also converts 50% of the supported skill's damage to bleeding, and then on top of that gives you a 21% bonus multiplier to all bleeding from all sources while moving. So basically what this does is it's like if you're a bleed barbarian, for instance, you'd probably want to pick this one because it's going to give you a nice multiplier for your bleeds. Electrocution support gives you a nice stun and also converts 50% to lightning, which would be really good for, say, the new lightning druid with the new lightning unique. We also have poison support, which is going to give you a poison over 5 seconds and a 12% chance to spread to all targets. This one is very effective for instance, the rogue. There's a lot of things that have to do with monsters being poisoned, damage reduction from poison. The new Toxic Alchemist update gives you 100% extra damage if the monster is already poisoned when you use the ability, and so forth and so on. So there's definitely an advantage to being able to poison the enemy in advance. On top of this, we also have the Dusk support, which is the shadow damage. So that would be really interesting for a Shadow Necromancer. Converts 50% to Shadow, and also has 11.5% for chance for their attacks to be interrupted. And then we have Devastation support, which is basically just a huge critical multiplier for the Seneschal. And we have Mockery support, which is a taunt. The taunt is actually really nice. You can basically turn your little Seneschal into kind of like a golem, like a clay golem from like Diablo 2. You get that taunt on him, you make it so he hits lots of targets, everything gets taunted, and he's constantly kind of drawing attention away from you. So in this way, you can use him as utility, and you can have him, like help you out that way. He doesn't die, so because he doesn't die, then, well, guess what? You don't really have to worry about him taunting the monsters. He does kind of get staggered every now and then, but for the most part, it's not really a big deal. On top of this, we also have the resource support, which is where you can get resource back for yourself every time he hits the target. And then on top of that, we also have the burning support, which is very similar to the other ones up here, which is another 50% supported skill damage as applied as burning. And monsters take an additional 26% times bonus critical strike damage from the central construct. So basically here you have another way that you could support like a sorceress. Sorceresses have key passive, it's called Combustion. Combustion gets multipliers basically for every additional burning effect that you have on a target. So adding in another additional burning effect with the burning support is just another way that you can add in more damage to your like Inferno Sorceress, or your Firewall Sorceress, or your Meteor Sorceress, which is pretty popular this season. Breaking support is really powerful. I would definitely recommend you take a look at this one because it basically just completely destroys the barrier of an enemy. One such enemy that I can give you an example of is the Butcher. When the Butcher shows up, he has a regenerative barrier that continues to come back every single time it hits a certain timer, which makes it very difficult to kill the Butcher because he is basically just, like you have to destroy that entire barrier, then work on his HP, and then the barrier comes back. Well, basically this allows him to just destroy that barrier entirely, and it also gives him a 40% chance to make the enemy vulnerable for 2 seconds, which is pretty nice. Registered damage support is very much like the Barber Gem from Season 2, if you don't remember that. So the Barber Gem from Season 2 allowed you to kind of like store up damage and then deliver it all at once. So this one basically does the same thing. All of the damage that is done to that particular target from the supported skill is registered, and then the registered damage explodes at 38% effectiveness when the target dies as fire damage. So this would be something that you could potentially use very well with a Fire Sorceress who is scaling fire damage, because you would, of course, also get that scaling fire damage onto the Seneschal. Then we come up to Fortify support. So this is just another way that you can add in Fortify to your character, keeping that fortification up constantly. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize about Fortify is it falls off relatively quickly because it has a timer. It's like a 4 or 5 second timer, and once it hits that 4 or 5 second timer, if you haven't added Fortify to that Fortify list, at any time within those 4 or 5 seconds, then it's immediately going to start degrading. So having an additional Fortify, even if it's a small Fortify, if it's a constant, never-ending Fortify that's coming in on a regular basis, it's going to prevent that degradation, and it's going to make it more likely for you to stay capped out. We also have safeguard support, which gives you a straight damage reduction. So every single time the skill is used, you just get straight damage reduction, which is really amazing. Arcing support allows the skill to arc to additional enemies. This one in particular is arcing to 4 additional enemies, and it goes up to 5 on the next rank. Utilizing this with some of the other effects like Tempest, Firefly, Lightning Bolt, Focus Fire can make for a very effective firing effect that can hit multiple targets. Now, even if it doesn't do very good damage, you can still utilize this for utility. So, how would you utilize this for utility? Well, think about it like this. If I'm utilizing, say, the burning support to get the enemies burning, or the bleeding support to get that extra multiplier for the bleeding effect, I want to hit as many targets as I can. Okay? So, if that's the case, well, then you're going to want to put something like arcing in play, because that way the ability is going to hit more targets, and the more targets the ability hits, the more enemies that are going to bleed, right? So this allows you to set him up so that he's just making everything bleed on the field. So you don't think about this guy strictly as a damage object. He's not there specifically for DPS. He's not there specifically for support. He's not there specifically for, like utility. What he's there for is to fill in the gaps of what you need for your character. So if you're a bleed barbarian, you're going to set him up to make everything bleed, because that's going to help you out. Making everything bleed and giving you a bonus damage to bleeding is not only going to increase your bleeding amount that you do, it's going to add an additional bleed. And then when you use your rupture, you're going to be able to pull off that bleed damage and actually reapply that bleed damage, even though it's not yours, as even more damage that you're dishing out. Next is the duration support, which is pretty self-explanatory, just increasing the duration of the effects. Very useful for something like Flash of Adrenaline, which is going to obviously give you additional damage, and then you increase the duration, so instead of lasting for 10 seconds, it now lasts for 12. So you've got your 14% multiplier for 12 seconds. On top of this, we also have voluminous support, which increases the size of the ability. So same thing as before when we're talking about like the bleeding support or something. In fact, let's use a different example. So poison support. If I want to make sure that everything is being hit, voluminous support is a very good option for something like gyrate. So gyrate is an AoE like whirlwind, right, which hits a whole bunch of targets. Well, if I throw the voluminous stone on with the gyrate, then the Seneschal is going to hit more targets. He's going to poison more targets, which is going to help me in a lot of ways. It's going to help me by increasing my damage reduction versus poison targets, because they'll actually be poisoned. I can get more toxic alchemist damage because I get 100% times multiplier if the monster was already poisoned before I hit them with my poison attack. On top of that, there's other things that poisoning can do, like, for instance, on the Druid, if you poison all the targets, you get Heightened Malice, gives a 45% target multiplier. There's just tons of different ways that you can use this to your benefit. Gripping support is another really nice one, which is a pull-in. So gripping pulls everything in. It does have a 17-second cooldown, but it goes down as you rank it up. And that's just another way that you can add a pull-in to your character if you don't already have one. So this could be very effective, for instance, if you were trying to poison everything as well, because you could use voluminous support and you could use the gripping support, which would allow him to pull everything in, and then he gyrates, hits everything around him, poisoning all of it instantaneously. And then everything is poisoned and ready for you in advance, essentially. Initiative support also allows him to teleport. Now, this one is going to be particularly useful for those of you who are doing like melee and range things, because one of the problems with him is he kind of gets stuck behind on stuff sometimes. And if you put this one on there, he will teleport to the target if he's out of range, which will help him, drastically in keeping up with you. On top of this, seeking support allows the projectile to auto-seek enemies, which is pretty cool. Then we have tactical support, which decreases the cooldown of the supported skill. So in this particular case, and I'm using Flash of Adrenaline, I want Flash of Adrenaline up all the time to get that extra damage bonus. So I'm using the tactical support to reduce the cooldown of the ability, which has a 15-second cooldown, and then I'm using the duration support to increase the duration of the ability. So if we take a look at my ability right now, it currently has a 10-second effectiveness and then a 15-second cooldown. Well, if I grab a calculator real quick, we can play around with this. So it's 10 seconds, right? And I'm adding 2 seconds or 1.6 seconds to that right now, so I'm bringing it up to 11.6. And then I have tactical support, which reduces the cooldown by 26% times. So if we take 15 and we subtract, I know it doesn't work this way, but 26%, that brings us down to 11.1. And we potentially have a situation where we might actually have permanent uptime for Flash of Adrenaline. So it will last the same amount of time as the cooldown, because we're using tactical and duration support to increase that and also decrease the increase the duration and decrease the cooldown. Now, we can also take a look at piercing support. So piercing support is pretty good if you're using ranged abilities. This way, the attack actually pierces through stuff. So if you're using, say, lightning bolt, and it fires, it won't just get eaten up when it hits a target. It'll pierce through, hit more targets, right? So you could use, say, multi-shot, which I think is the next one. So multi-shot and pierce together to create a very nice lightning bolt, which is going to hit basically everything in front of the Seneschal. Then you would combine that together with something like the tuning stone of the, say, bleeding support to make everything in front of the Seneschal bleed. And in this way, you can set up some very effective utility spiders. Now, speaking of what's the best setup, there is no best setup as far as I'm concerned. Just like the Mercenaries in Diablo 2, you have to set this guy up for your character. You've got to figure out what it is that your character needs. I could go over some like of my setups. Like first off, a defensive / offensive setup that I've been working on is the Reconstruct, which is the heal. Then I also use the Fortify to help shore my Fortify up, and I use the Safeguard for the damage reduction. And then I always use the Initiative support with this, so that no matter where he is, when he goes to use that heal, he will teleport to me. And it actually works very, very effectively. On top of that, I also use the Output. So this is a defensive side, and I'm also using the offensive side. And I use Flash of Adrenaline for the damage increase, tactical support for the cooldown reduction, gripping support, so he pulls everything in for me, which I really enjoy, and then duration support, which gives me the additional duration on Flash of Adrenaline, so it lasts longer. Another configuration that I like to do is this configuration, where I take the Protect to add the barrier into the situation. So now I have an additional barrier on top of the heal, and he's going to sit there and he's going to cast this barrier on me over and over again. And I'm still going to keep the tactical support here to reduce the cooldown so the barrier goes off more often. And I'm going to keep the duration support on here so the barrier lasts longer. And this way, I'm getting a really nice barrier, and it turns this into a defensive setup. So now instead of pure offense or even half offense, I'm just pure defense. So this is going to help keep me alive. It's going to heal me, fortify me, give me damage reduction, make sure he's by my side, give me a barrier, and it's going to make sure the barrier lasts longer and has a shorter cooldown. All of this means I stay alive, which is what I really like. Another way that you could potentially set this guy up is for your specific damage output type. I could go over this 100 different ways and talk about 100 different examples, but let's pick a couple examples and we'll just make some configurations, shall we? So let's go ahead and make a couple of configurations, and I'll give you some ideas. So let's assume that you are, what's a popular build? The Meteor Sorceress this season. So let's assume you're the Meteor Sorceress this season, and you really want to get as much damage output as you can from your Meteor, or you're setting up for Fire. Fire or Burning, doesn't really matter which one. You're probably going to want to set this guy up for burning, and you probably want him to burn a lot of stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the fire effect, which is to focus fire. And we're probably also going to use Firefly. These are the two fire effects, and these deal some pretty decent amounts of damage. Now, we want them to deal even more damage, though, in the right categories, so that they're dishing out more burning than what you would normally need, right? So Firefly, I think, works very well with registered damage support, and registered damage support is a fire damage explosion, which is going to give you an additional fire type damage. And then on top of that, these are both going to, this is fire, but we want burning as well, because we're going to take advantage of combustion. So we're going to add in the burning support, which is going to convert 50% of the focus fire to burning. And then we want to make sure the focus fire is hitting lots of targets, okay? So we're going to put a couple different things on here. So when you hold your mouse over something, it'll tell you what's compatible and what's not. And as you can see here, some of these are not compatible with focus fire. A really good way to set up focus fire is to utilize the arcing, which is going to arc between targets. That's going to get us a lot of additional targets being hit by the focus fire, which means it's going to spread the burning better. And then on top of that, since we are a sorceress and we might not want to get beat the crap up, we could be using something like gripping support, or maybe a taunt could also be useful. There's a lot of different ways you could potentially go with this. I'm going to utilize this one, registered damage support with Firefly. And then we're also going to grab mockery support on this one so that we get a taunt. And then we're going to use a gripping support on this one so we get a pull in. That way we have a pull in and a taunt constantly, which are going to help us focus everything together. Now, what's one thing about fire damage that works really well? Stacking fire damage underneath the targets, right? So having all nice and grouped up in that particular regard is going to be useful. And then on top of that, we're also going to use probably something like, let's see here, multi-shot for the Firefly. And let's go take a look and see what he looks like when we use this configuration. Now, keep in mind, however, that I do not scale fire damage. This character is not a fire damage character. I'm not scaling fire damage. I don't have combustion. I don't have Asus Ferocity. I don't have fire damage bonus in my tree. I'm not running, like massive amounts of burn damage on various items. So when you see the way his performance is on me, it's not going to be the same as a fire sorceress that has all of those things. And let's just see how he works, shall we? So those are the little fireflies that he shoots out. He's actually doing pretty good, especially considering I don't have any fire mods. Let's see how he does with the damage reduction, guys. And he pulled them all in, and he's blowing them all up. Fairly effective, actually, especially considering this is World Tier 4, and I'm not helping him at all, really, except for maybe like the pull-in. And it's really quite interesting how you can set these guys up, specifically to get the best effect out of things. As you can see, he's burning everything quite effectively. He pulled everything in, and then he blew everything up with the registered damage support. And that's just one particular way you could set him up. Let's explore some additional ways that you could potentially set this guy up. So let's assume I'm a barbarian, so I'm a melee type character. And melee type characters are definitely going to be a little bit different than your range types. So if I was doing a melee type character, I would probably do something like gyrate and impale. Those are pretty good ones together. And then on top of that, I would probably run bleeding support with gyrate, because that's going to hit as many targets as I can, which is definitely what I'm looking for. And then on top of that, we're also going to grab registered support here with impale, because I want them to explode, which is going to help me out a ton. We're still going to use gripping support to pull them all in, but I think I'm going to avoid the taunt on this one so we can get more damage output. And then on top of that, I might want to try to think here, because we need to beef up gyrate as much as possible. So I would think voluminous, so that it hits more targets, as many targets as we can. And then we also want him to basically telestomp, so we're going to use initiative with gyrate. That way he telestomps, uses the gyrate, makes everything bleed, and then he's going to impale them. And this is going to be our main damage here. So we're going to do registered damage support, gripping support to pull them in if needed, which is probably going to be needed. And actually, you know what? I'm trying to think here. We might want the gripping support here so that when he teleports in, the gripping automatically pulls them in, and then the impale hits them afterward. So that might be a good switch out. And then we won't be able to use the voluminous support though. So let's do that. That way the gyrate pulls them in, and then the impale hits them after they all get pulled in. I think that's probably better in general. All right, and then we're gonna up the damage of this. So we're gonna throw the crit on there to get him more damage that way, and then we're also gonna use the efficiency support. All right, so let's see how he does with this setup. I mean, pretty decent. Let's pull in. Actually, let me take off my Ring of the Sacrilegious too, because I think I'm getting my free corpse explosions in there. We don't want that messing with the results. Let's go find another pack of man stairs. There you go. We got an event. Let's just let the spider. Let's just let the spider do stuff. Let's just see how he does. Be interesting just to test him and see how he does. We gotta bring him over here so we can actually kill these DR guys. Looks like he got stunned. Yeah, he got stunned. It's not quite as good as the fire setup, but everything is bleeding, which is what we want. It's not always about damage. Sometimes it's just about making sure that everything is hitting the bleeding effects. I'm not quite sure the gyrate really does as much damage as I'd like it to, though. Doesn't really hit as many targets, I feel like. And we got some elites here. He's definitely doing a much poorer damage, but you can see the bleed ticks. You see all the bleed ticks? It's not about the damage of these bleed ticks, because as long as they're bleeding on the Bleed Barbarian, I'm getting a 21% multiplier on my bleeds, which is what I want. I want them to be always bleeding so that I'm getting a multiplier for my bleeds, and that works out pretty well. We could probably set him up better, though. Like, I feel like there's a better ways we could set him up. Hold on, let's do a quick town visit. And let's see if we can refine this a little bit better. I think a ranged ability might work better than gyrate, just as an example. So let's hook him up with a ranged ability, and let's see if the ranged ability fixes things. So instead of gyrate here, we're gonna throw in. I need something that's gonna hit as many targets as possible. And I think Lightning Bolt is really our key here. Because Lightning Bolt hits tons of targets. We just got to make sure that it actually hits everything. So let's take out initiative support. Let's throw in multi-shot. And then let's move gripping support over to impale. And let's throw in piercing. That way we have a piercing multi-shot bleed, which is what we're looking for. So the entire goal of this is just to make sure that he's making everything on the screen bleed, and I think piercing multi-shot probably would do that better. Well, he's already just wrecked those little snakes. And oh, that was my yank in. Take my Ring of Sacrilegious back off. I mean, as you can see here, is pretty effective at doing what he's supposed to do here, which is he's supposed to make them bleed, and he does it. And then the impale comes in and it smacks them with a little bit extra. Now, you could go with something else entirely here. So instead of going with the DPS setup on this other side, you could just go with something for yourself. So you could just go with, say, Flash of Adrenaline here. You've already got your bleed here. You don't really have to worry about that, right? So then you just go with Flash of Adrenaline, and then throw in something like gripping support so that he pulls the targets in, which is exactly what you want, right? And then probably do just like duration and where's the other one? and tactical support, so that it lasts longer and whatnot. And then you get a damage bump there, and you get a damage bump here from the bleeding support. You could also go with, instead of a offensive option here, you could go with a purely defensive option, and you could throw like the heal on here. If you need an additional heal, then that's great. So you can throw in like Fortify, the damage reduction, and then maybe you could even throw in the taunt on here so that he taunts monsters away from you. But it looks like that one's not compatible, so we can't use that one. Is gripping compatible with this one? Where's the gripping support? Registered gripping. Gripping is compatible. Okay, so we can use the pull in here. So then we have a defensive option as well. And that's kind of the really cool thing about this, is that you can set this guy up to exactly what it is that you need. And I think that's something that people have really kind of been missing with this guy. It's not all about how much damage he can do. It's not all about how much damage he can give you. It's not all about how much he can heal you. It's not all about, what kind of support he can give you. It's really just fine-tuning him specifically for what you need on your specific build. On some characters, you might want to go full defense. On some characters, you might want to go full offense. Think about also the fact that if he's providing you with a very tanky setup, like if he gives you barriers, if he gives you healing, if he gives you all this stuff, well, then you can focus a little bit more on offense, which allows you to be, more aggressive in the way that you're doing things. The healing that he offers is absolutely excellent. Another thing that I would recommend is that if you're having trouble with him running away from you all the time, and he seems to just never be near you, my suggestion to you for that is to go with a more defensive setup. If you're too fast, if he just always seems to be lagging behind for whatever reason, like maybe you're just a speed runner and you want to go through as fast as you possibly can, go, faster, 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 then set him up with defensive, like all defensive stuff, or flash of adrenaline. That's that kind of thing. And make sure you throw in the initiative support, which allows him to teleport to you. If you throw in the initiative support, whenever he goes to use his protect for his barrier, or his reconstruct to heal you, or if he uses his flash of adrenaline to give you more HP, he's going to teleport to you, and he's basically going to completely eliminate any kind of lag behind, because when he goes to use the skill, he'll be there. And I mean, that's really all I can say about this guy. I know the video has already been like 32 minutes, but I didn't really think I would need to go over it this much, but it seems like a lot of people are confused on how to get the most benefit out of this guy, and they think he's useless, and I'm here to tell you that he's not useless. He's actually exceedingly useful, depending on what character you are, and even if you can't get any benefit out of him whatsoever, even if the DPS is terrible, even if you feel like he doesn't offer you any utility, you can still just set him up for free barriers, free heals, free fortify, free damage reduction, and just go full tanky and just forget about him. If you set him up for full tankiness, just barriers and everything and healing and all that, you just forget it. Just set it and forget it, like a Ron Code Rotisserie Grill. And honestly, he's better than pretty much all of the mercenaries from Diablo 2. I know, gasp. In Diablo 2, you could set up a mercenary for basically any task that you wanted. If you were an elemental character, you could build a tank. If you were a offensive character, you could have lots of offensive auras. If you were a elemental character like a conviction paladin, you could go with an elemental merc to take advantage of your negative resistances. But the problem with that is that you had to go with each individual mercenary to change everything out. So if you wanted, elemental damage, you had to go with the Act 3 Merc. If you wanted auras, you had to go with Act 2. If you wanted a tank, honestly, the Act 5 Merc was a better tank than the Act 2. If you needed a ranged character, well, then the Act 1 Merc. But this guy is literally all of those mercenaries together. He's literally the entire mercenary armada of Diablo 2 in one neat little package. You want a ranged character? Bam. You want a melee character? Bam. You want a tank? Well, guess what? We've got literally a taunt for you. Bam. You want somebody who can drag all the monsters together and you can make literally, like a sushi out of them in a giant hot pot? Well, bam, you got frickin' gripping support, and you can pull them all together. Bam. You want somebody who can support you and add poison damage or bleeding damage or burning damage or whatever it is that you need for your character? Bam, you've got it. You want somebody that can just hit the entire screen for whatever reason. You can go multi-shot, piercing, arcing, all sorts of things, and throw in ranged attacks so they're literally hitting everything on the screen. Maybe they're not doing very much damage, but you can literally hit the entire screen if that's what you want to do. If you want to make everything bleed, you want to make everything poisoned, you want to make everything frozen, you want to make everything chilled, you can literally do that too. Maybe there's even an attachment for you so it'll help you in bed. It does have a very large proboscis, little phallic doojank on the back. Maybe it'll help you out with that stuff too. Honestly, I think that this guy's great. My personal opinion: add him permanently. I'd like to see this guy permanently be in the game. I was jonesing for a mercenary, ever since Diablo 2. Diablo 2 has amazing mercenaries. Setting up the mercenary is like half the fun of the game. Like, you literally spend time thinking about, like, what mercenary do I need? Which one am I going to go with? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 5. Never was an Act 4 one, but it would be fun if they ever added one. But, like, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out exactly how you want to set up your mercenary. Like, how best can this mercenary help you as a player? And this guy literally represents exactly that. He literally has all the options available to you like a frickin' piano keyboard, and all you've got to do is put in the right options, and he'll support your character. And if they add him in permanently, I'd all be for that. Like, I want my own mercenary. I think this would be great, and I like this guy. I think with a little bit of fine-tuning, they could make him even better. I don't like the leveling up system for this guy. I personally think the leveling up system is absolutely stupid. And quite honestly, it's going to take an eternity to level up any of these to level 10, and let alone all of them to level 10. And on top of that, they don't carry over between characters. So that's pretty crappy as well. So leveling up a second character and getting a second mercenary leveled up essentially is going to be an absolute pain in the butt. So they need to do some fixing. They got to figure out this leveling, ranking bullcrap because I think it's stupid. And then on top of that, I think it probably should carry over if they can't figure out the level ranking stuff, because I'm not going to spend an eternity leveling up all this stuff to rank 10 only to have to do it again on the next character, which I think is absolutely dumb. And let me get my guy set back up before I forget, because I will totally forget to redo this later. My preference right now has been Flash of Adrenaline and Reconstruct. I think these two are absolutely amazing. I've also been a big fan of Registered Damage Support, but I can't use Registered Damage Support with Flash of Adrenaline or Reconstruct. Once I get to a higher level and I feel a little bit safer and I don't need so much healing, I might pull out Reconstruct and throw in some DPS output with the Registered Damage Support, because it's pretty much like a Barber Gem from Season 2. And let's grab Duration, then we're going to grab Gripping, throw that in there. And then over here on Reconstruct, we're going to grab Fortify, Safeguard, and where's the last one? So many fun ones here. There's so much stuff to work with this. I think I was using just Gripping. I think that's what I was using. Oh no, Initiative, so he teleported to me. That's right. All right. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys and gals joining me for these fun little adventures. The Season 3, I think, has been really fun so far, just to give you some final thoughts. I really like the vaults. I really like the traps. I've had a lot of fun with the stuff that's been added so far. I've heard some of the negative comments, but I'm not really sure I agree with them, to be perfectly honest. I actually have been really having a lot of fun with the season. I've had a lot of people come in and tell me that they've been hearing a lot of negative things, but then when I talk with the community, they don't seem to have negative things to say about the season. So I can't really figure out whether it's just a vocal minority just spreading a bunch of hate around the season, or if it's actually a popular opinion. But it's not my opinion. Anyway, as always, I do appreciate you guys watching, and keep watching.